Eric Lizer. I'm clinically depressed. Angry all the time. A little crazy. Totally radical. And this is the Evening Muse. The Sheikh Jarrah property dispute in Israel right now, in Palestine. Israel, Palestine. Been a problem for years and years, decades. Nothing to joke about. This isn't funny, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it because they started evicting Palestinians out of their homes. That's not cool. They said they weren't paying the rent, and maybe that's true, but it doesn't matter because they've been fighting and fighting and fighting. It's leading to mass homelessness and displacement. You can't do that, Israel. That ain't right. So Hamas starts shooting missiles at Israel, blowing up innocent people. They say they're not, but yes, they are. Some people are dying and dying. Coffee shops. That led to retaliation and sure as hell looked like war crimes to the rest of the world, blowing up housing projects and schools and hospitals even in Gaza. They said missile silos were up among things. Is it true? Probably. There ain't a lot of land, but still, you're killing lots of innocent people. That ain't right. Oh yeah, the Israeli government behaving like a bunch of fascists. It went on as far as disrupting services in a mosque on Ramadan. You can't do that. You're brainwashing your youth, making them join the army. What's it called? Israeli Liberation Force? ILF? I don't know, but it ain't right. That ain't cool. The world's looking at you, man. Israel. I gotta wonder. Hamas isn't governing the Palestinian people effectively. That's true. But is Netanyahu doing the right thing? Looks like a fascist to me. You can't do that. They both got to get on now. But Hamas isn't using the money for the people properly. They're not using it on infrastructure, crops, goods, services to export to the world. No, they're just making more weapons to attack Israel. So what's the real thing to do? Is Israel a nation that oppressed us in the past? They're behaving the same. You know what? I just got to ask. If we have the right to live in peace, yes. But so do the Palestinians, yes. So is Israel a nation? Or is it the collection of souls around the world? Maybe that's the real Israel, the people, the souls, everybody else around the world. And it's not just a country. I don't know. But there's a lot of land in Saudi Arabia that could be used for the creation of a new nation and establish a two-state solution. And while we're fixing the Middle East, let's go ahead and give Turkey back to Armenia and let the Turkish people establish their own country of New Turkey between Iran and Iraq. Today's guest is Abram Siegel Rivers, lead singer and frontman of the Voodoo Fix. He's also an author, a public speaker, and founder/executive director of the One Day nonprofit organization. Through his work, he's shown a commitment to empowering individuals, connecting, inspiring, and amplifying community through art and the shared expression of our unique gifts. Multi-ethnic and multicultural, Abe is rarely qualified to discuss his journey from being born into a secular family and discovering his own spiritual expression. Welcome back to the show, Abe.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it, brother. Part two.
Part two. Here. That's right. A spiritual boogaloo.
Spiritual boogaloo.
All right. So for those of you who have already seen the show, this is the second half. Last time we were on, and just to be clear, we are continuing our conversation on whether or not spirituality. Oh, I hit myself for a minute. You like that?
We did the boogaloo shift. We did the shift.
For real. So we're continuing our conversation on whether or not spirituality is logical. You want to do it again? Watch. Do that anytime I want. Okay. Welcome back. See, you know,
it's like the electric slide there. Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the ruler part of it. All right. So, is spirituality logical? The answer was debatable. You know, I kind of came to a point where, like, yeah, the math and the science kind of made sense, and I think you left off where you're like, I don't know about this. Maybe it's not. So, let's get into the history of the world's religions. Okay. Where things have kind of built upon, because yeah, we talked a lot about where things are now, but I think it comes down to humanity's search for meaning. Okay, ancient humanity search for meaning, and I think the biggest things that we initially did was there was astronomy and astrology, numerology, and ancient medicine. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that up here. And we can start talking a little bit about that guy. Let me see here. Whew. Okay. So first there was Pangea. Before there was Pangea, okay? Before there was one landmass. And then everything kind of broke apart on Earth, right? We had our separate little regions. But early people, once we started having people, already started looking up at the stars. I feel like that was the original reality show. You know, before television or anything, I feel like that's what people kind of did. You're, oh, look at it. A comet would shoot by and the moon would do some crazy stuff. And I feel like a lot of people started looking up at the skies, a lot of cultures, and they were taking down patterns, and they were establishing constellations and whatnot. And then they came to different meanings they put behind them, like the original gods. The original gods,
as far as they were concerned, they were mapping the heavens.
And the original gods were all like, you know, Mars, you know, the Greek gods, the Romans, whatnot. But I think we're even getting ahead of ourselves talking about them. I just think the stars, the heavens, and then numerology, right? Looking at patterns, maybe you could say they were trying to find patterns in what they had around them. And then the last thing I put on there was ancient medicines, finding different plants and balms and things that they could use to see if, you know, elevated states, mushrooms, maybe smoking a little herb they found here and there, whatever they could do and use to change their state of being. Maybe crush something, some dried up stuff into a powder, blow it right into someone's face, you know? But I think that there was a commonality to that.
Yeah, and I think there's also distinguishing between East and West, because, you know, the Vedic teachings, like if you read the Veda, you know, ancient Hindu, you know, even before there was organized religion, it was all how. I mean, this is I'm no historian or religious scholar, but this is my you know, what I see is like, you know, it came out of how do I deal with malevolence in the world? How do I be? And it's like, especially when early human history, we were very community driven and survive. Like we were very small, like large cities was so not the case. It was like small groups of people, you know, that had needed order. And, you know, some people had, you know, there's malevolence in the world. And it's like, how do we deal with that? How do we live the best life for ourselves and our community? So it was really established for, you know, how, I mean, it's the suffering question. How do we not suffer? How do we make me, my family, my community not suffer? And that's
are you talking about more like tribes rather than, because there were early civilizations, if we want to jump into that, but I think this predates those civilizations.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like before, you know, our concept of religion is so, you know, removed from the origin, because the origin was based on we were tribal, we were in small groups. Like we don't, you know, even just the newer religions there was still a very few amount of people, but the ancient religions, you know, to go to like even before Hinduism, but I mean, you go to every culture has its own, you know, view of the world, but based on what you're saying, like the stars, you know, based on mapping what they could see. And, you know, but there's so many different cultures who found same information from a different part of the world without ever actually communicating, you know, and not until later.
Yeah. And I think it really speaks to, like, now I think we take for granted, like, even before the advent of the internet, you pretty much had the knowledge of the people around you, you know, like your community is what you kind of mimicked and learned from and whatnot. And the fact, like you're saying, this sort of wisdom, or I mean, I don't know what language you want to use, of sort of, like I would say like a sacred wisdom, because it seemed very universal, you know? It's amazing to think that there were certain things that were popping up across the entire globe that early, before civilizations, that kind of show the commonality of the human existence.
Right. And I think a common theme, it was a leader amongst, you know, small groups of people, someone who had a calling, had some form of religious experience, And, I mean, every teaching, every spiritual text, it's based on that. It's like, it's like the hero's journey. There's like always like a situation, like first things were terrible. Everyone was starving. And then this one person stepped up and said, God called me to do this. And it was like a wave. And like in every religion, how it, we observe how a religion spread. If you look at a world map of how religion is spread over history, you'll see like, there was, first you just see the land. You see there's before Buddha, and then there's Buddha, and then you can see how the wave of how the region and the world Buddhism spread, and then Jesus came, and you see how the wave of Christianity spread, and then Muhammad came. So you could see it's some leader.
Time out. Before we do that, let's get into the early civilization.
Okay, even before. Okay,
way before even that. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and hide this thing right here up here real quick. Okay. So before that, the very, very early civilizations that we know of, we had the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Egyptians, and the Hebrews, the Hindus, and the Babylonians. Okay. So, I mean, I'm no historian. Okay. I just know the general humanities that I learned. Were the Aztecs, because the Aztecs and the Mayans, one were in Mexico and one were in Peru. Were the Mayans in Mexico and then the Aztecs were in Peru? Is that right?
I mean, well, it's before Mexico and Peru, but yeah, I think it's. I'm pretty sure Mayans are in Mexico.
Okay, but, some part of the Mexico.
But I could be wrong.
Okay,
but so the earliest recorded religion is the Hindus. Like before Hindus, there was the Vedic teachings.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that, because I don't think I even threw that on here.
Well, I mean, I know it's kind of like the ancient teachings where when you read about chakras, you'll read about like there's a lot of it's very, I mean, at its core, it's the core of Eastern religion, really, because I mean that was when organized religion began. Because I mean, man had spiritual practice before we ever articulated this is my faith, this is my religion. But it all had a purpose, and but the ancient Vedic teaching, like that's I think it goes back over maybe 10,000 years or almost. Don't quote me on that. I remember doing some research on it, but in India is pretty much the beginning of human spirituality, and but every culture, I mean that was the East, and as we're our communities, like we were a collection of communities. If you look at every text, it's interesting because how we talk about even these ones we talk about, they were if you go from the Darwin perspective, they were the ones that survived. There's so many more who, I mean, you read in the scriptures, it's like there's like the Canaanites, there's like all these other sects and groups that didn't survive those times, and like it was very much a Darwinian battle of practice and spiritual. I mean, I don't want to call it conquest, but it was like spirituality, like who identified what was the biggest, most popular religion was not. It was fluctuating because it was a battle of ideas.
It was a search for meaning in the region, because I don't think the Aztecs had knowledge of the Mayans. I could be wrong, but that's what makes it so crazy with the Aztecs, Mayans, and Egyptians all building pyramids, how they did. Right. Because a lot of people talk about like at the time, how were they able to move such heavy solid stone structures, and we don't know. It doesn't seem to make sense with our current laws of gravity.
Right.
You have a bunch of slaves, and then you make a bunch of sand, and then you just get like hundreds of slaves, and they're just like pulling it like an ox would till a field, pulling it up this sand structure. But I mean, they were talking about like, I don't know how tall these things are either. And also the fact that they were building these same structures all around the world. There's a mystery to that as well. Like, why did they all have the same idea? And I got some theories based around when we were talking about, the physics of how things work. I don't know. Like, I kind of feel like back then people might have had powers. Like they're just more in touch with the universe, literally. Like I think, if you're just eating clean, maybe your entire life, you don't have all the distractions. But at the same time, they're fucking lopping people's heads off and doing crazy, sinful stuff. Like that's the whole story of Babylon, right? Wasn't there just like a pleasure garden?
I think it's being tapped in, just like think of the animals, it's like think of a pre-evolved human, but getting to like I just imagine the moment humans became sentient, we were probably very much more tapped into the natural cycle of the universe, and we lost it as our mind, it's like the day the ego was created, it was all of a sudden it's like, this is mine. It's like the individual. It's like the individual is born, but so is the ego, because originally it's like it was all community. Like, and with very recent exceptions, religion used to only be the purpose of the community. It had nothing to do with the individual. It was nobody was using. Every culture was dealing with what they were dealing with. If you were born in this area of the world, you were if you're born in India, you're going to be a Hindu. And I mean, it's not, black or white like that, but I mean, for the most part, like it was many pre-civilizations that were dealing with what they were dealing with culturally. And they had wise people, all of them had wise people amongst them that it's like, hey, we need somebody to map how, or to tell our youth how to be, so we suffer the least, and so we can have the most prosperity, the most joy, the most blessings, the most abundant life. And it was like, but it wasn't like you could go to one side of the world and where it's like there wasn't the internet, so you couldn't share an idea or share a spiritual concept unless you actually had contact. So the earliest was pre-civilization.
You're not questioning the these people on the other side of the globe unless there's some pseudoscience happening. Now, they have those shows like Ancient Aliens on the History Channel stuff, and a lot of people are like, aliens. I don't think so. I think it was a very human phenomenon, but I think, and this is just me waxing poetic, this is why the show's called The Evening Muse. It's here we're just spitballing, we're thinking. Like, I don't know why certain people weren't able to, or were perhaps able to, is a better way to say it, tap into some latent abilities. Like if we're only using a small percentage of our brain, maybe they're using more of their brain through being at a higher frequency, a higher meditative state, where if physics says, what is it? There's telepathy in the sense of like a mother and her child, and kind of look into the eyes of your baby, and there's something going on there. They kind of know, and vice versa. And it might have to do with also the hormonal thing going on through breastfeeding or whatever, or even like lovers, who are like very bonded. You can look at your significant other, and just through looking to each other's eyes, you might know what the person is thinking or feeling at that moment from that knowing of each other so well.
It's a very mystical intuition,
and it might be chemical too. It might have to do with what you're giving off. It might be biological. It might be scientific, and we just don't have the full understanding. So if that's a form of telepathy, the next level up is telekinesis, is moving something, literally moving something like an X-Man with your mind, your being, understanding that you are a collection of molecules, and the space between you is a collection of molecules, and the object is a collection of molecules, and just through the power of will, maybe they could move stuff. This would give some more credence to how these pyramids were being built all around the world. But like I said, this is a pseudoscience thing. I haven't read this in any book. I'm just thinking outside the box, okay? But with my understanding of science, I feel like this should be possible. We've just never seen it. The next leveling up is teleportation. So if you're able to move stuff with your mind, the next level is moving your entire being through that space. The closest thing we've ever seen towards something that could appear like teleportation is in the Bermuda Triangle. The electricity, the magnetism going on. Someone says they fly through this thing, boom, the clouds clear. They're way, way, way hundreds of miles, maybe thousands of miles past their destination on the other side of Florida or something now, having no idea how they could do that within the time or whatever. Totally just like being theoretical here, okay? But I'm just saying, we don't know how those pyramids were built and happened all over the country. If people were teleporting and shit, then someone from the Aztecs, Mayans, and Egyptians could be going to other sides of the planet and seeing what they're doing and coming up with this grand plan to build these pyramids all over the world at the time when there was no communication seemingly between them.
I can't say either way because I have not considered that, but I would say what's very likely is they were very tapped into a natural cycle. Like why it's like why do all it's like again, I mean, I don't want to keep pointing to Darwin, but like why do like different species around the world come to a natural, like I'm trying to think of an example, like why do birds all across the world build their nest the same way or a certain way? And it's like I just think it was a natural dealing with again, just imagine the moment we weren't sentient and then we were, and then here's this natural world that we're born into. And it's like when we have a need, be it physical, emotional, psychological, or spiritual, we are going to do what's naturally, in touch or connected with the earth. And
like
it's like a natural order.
Collective consciousness around
it's like it's like a natural order. It's like it's I mean, you could get into like synchronicity of how when you have there's no coincidence, like at the same level of development in the world, that the same invention happens at the same time across the. It's just like it's not a coincidence that people in the world at a given point in time have a same need, which they articulate in the same way. And it's I mean, a lot of it you could argue there is a metaphysical aspect to it, and it's like, and that comes back to what is the source of the idea? Is it the person, or is it the consciousness underlying? And I think leave that to philosophers. That
sure. And we also, I mean, you and I don't know the exact dates of when these pyramids were built, and I'm sure a historian has dated them and can give us closer things. So maybe we're saying, oh, Mayans, Aztecs, and Egyptians, or Hebrews, to be more succinct, the Hebrew slaves built these pyramids. It happened at the same time. It could have been thousands of years in between. For example, when you were talking about that, what's that group that predated the Hindus?
There's the Vedic teachings.
Okay, so you said that might have been around 10,000 years ago. The Egyptian civilization was roughly 5,000 years ago. But I wanted to talk about some interesting theories about Horus, because I think Horus was their main sun god at the time. They had a pantheon of gods, and I think a lot of these civilizations at the time believed in pantheons of gods. No one believed in one god until the Hebrews established monotheism, okay? But Horus, when they talk about the sun god, some stuff I know about him is in his, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, his origin story, for lack of a better term. They said he was born of the Virgin Isis. His birthday was December 25th. There was an eastern star that led 3 wise men to him when he was born, and he was taken to Egypt to escape the wrath of Typhon. Mm. He was taught in the temple as a child, baptized by Anup the baptizer at 30, and had 12 disciples. He performed miracles and walked on water. He raised El Azur-Us from the dead, was transfigured on a mount. Titles included the Way, the Truth, the Light, the Messiah, God's anointed Son, Son of Man, the Good Shepherd, Lamb of God, the Word, Morning Star, the Light of the World. He was crucified and buried in a tomb and resurrected. I don't know if that's all factual, but that's what I was able to find on this Horus, the sun god. 2,000 years ago, the same became ascribed to Jesus Christ. Now, I have some theories on, Christianity and the birth of the mythos and a lot that goes into Christianity, the belief, but we'll work our way up there. I'm just saying they had a very similar story 5,000 years ago with the Egyptian religion, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I may have been mistaken on the Vedas. I know it's one of the oldest texts, but I don't think it's 10,000 years. I think that's too. I think it's closer to a couple. But there's a record. That's the thing, is there is recorded. This is like what's interesting when you look at ancient humanity. It's like you don't know, because a lot of it was oral teaching before it was written, before there was even anyone wrote anything. Like writing was a discovery. The idea, ability to write, like it was like that was not even early in our history.
Well,
there's,
pictograms. Pictograms on walls. They were doing pictograms, and even the cavemen were doing kind of pictograms.
There's bear worshiping was like tens of thousands of years ago. Like we would worship animals, and we worship. I mean, there was, and I think that's what's fascinating to me is at what point did we discover our own sentience, and that for me that's when religion began.
And to me, that's a natural transition into the next topic that I wanted to get into, which was the birth of religion, as we kind of talk about it now. But one thing funny, just talking about pictograms for a second, it's where we started, and I feel like we went back to it with emojis. You can send like 3 emojis to someone. Someone makes me laugh. I don't do 3 of those crying, laughing, head kicked back. I send a skull, a coffin, and a bouquet of flowers to let you know I just died laughing. You know what I'm saying? Like we went back to pictograms. So
we got options.
That's right. Okay, but going back to now the birth of religion. You said people used to worship bears and stuff. So the natural progression where we come so far is early civilizations. People were discovering, looking up at the stars, looking up at the herbs and plants and life around us, maybe the meat, the life, the plant life, making elixirs and herbs and whatnot, and then numerology, finding patterns and placing spiritual significance on the patterns. Then from that, we went to these early civilizations that started really kind of creating a civilization. I don't mean to be redundant, but like they're building. They have their own teachings now. It was like a bigger, it's like a city.
The plow entered the room.
You know what I'm saying? So, they're starting to build waterways and finding ways to like sustain life for generations. But now, when I'm starting to think about religions, because I don't know if they call it religion. Before it's just like, this is what we believe here. This is not an option. This is how our people live. This is what it is. Okay. They're just a society. This was something where people started making choices outside of the norm and developing kind of a personalized belief system that maybe
rituals
went against the grain, perhaps too, making a choice. Yeah. So the earliest ones I think about are like pagans and Wiccans. Now, I don't know if pagan would be considered a religion at the time. I think pagan might almost be the absence of faith. Is that fair to say? Like
the term pagan came much later because it was referring to like a lesser. Paganism isn't derogatory, but when we refer to pagans, it was like pre-Christianity. It's like then this was the before religion of it was like the monotheistic religion the polytheistic religion is like it's like they believe in a God for everything. So it was kind of like and again, this is very Western, Eastern religion, like Buddhism and Hinduism was much before that. But for pagans, it was like the ancient Greeks, believed in all the different gods for everything. Like there was literally a God for everything.
So you would consider the Greeks and the Romans pagan religions?
I believe those are considered pagans. But I think it was a context.
So they're monotheistic. So then, but Hinduism would not be, because I know Greeks and Romans had their pantheon of gods based around
pagan. Pagan is like anyone besides the main religion. So it was like you could basically sum up. Oh, those are pagans. They don't believe in the biggest religion. It's like kind of like. It's just kind of like they believe in less popular things, so you kind of write them off. I mean,
I don't even know if they were around yet. Like, I don't think they were really Christianity wasn't in the picture yet. Like the Hebrews maybe just fought their way out of Egypt or whatever, but I don't think it wasn't Judaism yet. They were just maybe the Hebrew people at the time, and I think they found their way
even within the Hebrew people. Even like within the Old Testament, the Hebrews are talking about all these other people that believe in these lesser gods, and that's the thing is, it's all the context of how do we talk about the people that have believed in things different than us,
and those are pagans.
The term, and that's exactly like when you look up define the word pagan, it's finding when you look that up, it's people who are not in the major world religion. It's basically minority.
So the pagans,
you could.
in pagans in context to the Old Testament were those that did not believe in a
in the one true God. In the one true God.
Okay, so it's not even Christian at the time. It's pre Old Testament pagan. Okay,
right. So even the earliest Christians weren't Christian. You know, they were Jewish.
These were pagans. Everyone else, right? You know, I think at the time now, because a lot of those old civilizations died out. Okay, from when the Babylonians we didn't even get into. The Babylon got destroyed, right? Didn't Babylon get turned into a pillar?
Well, I mean, yeah, they were one of the earliest civilizations, and destroyed. I mean, there's the Tower of Babel is, you know, from the, there's so many historical and, you know,
mythos,
scripture, okay. But that's the thing is like it's constantly like countries and governments have been in flux, so have religions. And even within religions, there are subsects, but it was always so like the dominant religion at any given time in history is based on, you know, who had a spiritual leader that was charismatic and then shared an idea that had an impact in people's lives. Like, hey, this makes me suffer less. This brings me more prosperity, more joy, more abundance. So it's like, but the early religions was very much a way to keep order in a chaotic world.
It's also fair to bring up the fact that because we moved past Egypt and the Hebrews without talking about when the Hebrews escaped the land of Egypt in Exodus, they went into the land of Israel. So for those of us that are believers of the faith, that is when we talk about Jewish settlers, the Hebrews entering into the land of Israel, way before Palestine. But the thing is, you can't take away the rights of the Palestinian people there now. The problem is we've done that in America. You know, we took this land from the Native Americans and the Mexicans. You know, Mexico had America. We have it now. Okay, so we can look at ourselves the same way if we're all going to start thinking about like who's the original owner of these lands? Like where's the line? Same thing. Like I mentioned earlier too. Current Turkey was Armenia. They took that land. The English and French and Spanish have settled all over the damn globe. Are we going to give the land back to the people? Australia, the Aborigines were in that land first. Okay, those were the English prison colony. Like this is a tale as old as time. It's just like a selectively how we want to choose. Oh, who's doing the wrong thing here? Whose land is it really? Like we can have that conversation across the entire globe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's history repeating itself, but it's also, yeah, for me, it comes back to the source of, again, the ego. It's like this is mine, and it's like when you on one hand you have to label, you don't have to, but you know where you live, like you have this is this region, and it's like and that's been the fight. It's like a constant flag, and like this is our territory. No, this is our territory. No, this is our territory. And it's like the ones who write the history books are the ones who win that cultural battle.
And the irony is a lot of the settling of other people's lands came down to what's it called? Divine providence, or what is it?
Intervention, divine providence. Oh, divine providence with the kings.
No, where you go. I have the right to take this land because I have God wants me to have it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, divine might be divine providence. I think.
No. There's another word for it though. I can't think of it.
I forget. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Manifest destiny.
Oh, that's it.
I'm manifesting. God wants us to have this, which we'll get into the next, because a lot of these next people, when we really start talking about God, use God to take over the land. But if you'll listen for a second, I have a little tickle in my throat. If you don't mind, I wanted to have a little sip of this liquid death mountain spring water to clear this up. For those of you who've been watching the show before, liquid death, delicious mountain spring water from the Alps. They're here to murder your thirst and do away with plastic. We're going to kill plastic consumption. Pardon me. Liquid death, 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 liquid death. Hey, oh man, that's good water.
just happened there. I
Well,
consumed.
I want to start getting into that's a good transition into the Wiccans. Now, Wiccans were, I guess you'd say they worshiped nature, right? They worshipped Mother Earth, the trees, the moon, the cycle. I think it was a lot of women, their menstrual cycle, their sisterhood together. They might have been against the patriarchy. The patriarchy has always been an issue, you know. I think they had their own coven of women, and I think they were the ones who really first started using. And I'm not sure if maybe they're doing this in Egyptian culture too, but tarot cards, runes, sorcery through the herbs and whatnot, using it a sense of magic. But I think that was one of the earliest religions as well. Interesting fact, I found out tarot cards use a lot of the same. If you know anything about the tree of life, which is something they talk about in Kabbalah, which is the different dimensions, and there's an interplay with chakras actually that I'm learning as I'm trying to learn more about Kabbalah now. The different paths between these aspects on the tree of life, those pathways are used in tarot cards. Like what they kind of say on the bottom of tarot cards is all kind of in there. So I'm not very versed on tarot. I don't know if you know much about that or runes or anything, but I do believe that there is some validity to divination if you are a believer, if you have a certain wavelength to your energy. I just don't know what the long-term effects are if you're trying to communicate through the different membranes of spiritual realms that are surrounding us all the time, you know, what that does to us as an energy. How about that?
I mean, well, yeah. Well, I mean, this keeps pointing me back to, you know, well, I just guess the question is spirituality logical? And I think we could pick apart every ritual, every belief, but it's like, it comes down to, what do you mean by believe? Does it mean what you say? Is it what you do? Is it your ritual? And it's like, and that's kind of like, that's something that belief, is it a thought? Like, I feel like, and this is like it's something that I feel like is relearned every generation, because civic religion is like, I am the religion of my family, of my father and my father's father and my father. Like, that's how it's been most of you know, humanity's, you know, time on earth has been, I am whatever my religion is, my father. And what's interesting, father or mother, I guess, if you're Jewish.
Right.
But so, you know, but one thing I'm seeing is like that experience of, you know, belief is, you know, I feel like it would be, we would treat it like it's what we believe. It's like, oh, it's like a fact sheet. Like, I believe that this is true, and this is true, and this is true. And like, that's how I feel like we've been treating belief for a long time. And I feel like the most ancient religion was not that kind of belief. It was not just a intellectual piece of knowledge. Exactly. It was a ritual you did, because it's like, oh, it's like, if you say it as nothing, whether it's like a quote that I'll point. It's like a friend of mine said, I may have said this last time. It's like, we have a tongue in our mouth and we have a tongue in our shoes. And the only difference is the tongue in our shoes doesn't lie. And It's like, what do you believe? It's like, do you just say it with your words, or are you actually living your life and taking actions based upon that belief?
And here's some of the grand irony is these early religions, as we put them here, as we're talking about them, pagans, Wiccans, and the lost tribal traditions, which I mean,
yeah,
Aboriginal, yeah. Right? The indigenous people of regions that were living with nature, they seem to be more in tune with the land around them. You know, they're living. It seemed more so at peace, although there were sacrifices and stuff going on. The irony is, when we bring in the old gods, the Greeks, the Romans, and the Vikings are the first I'm thinking of. So the Norse gods, the Greek gods, the Roman gods start coming into the picture. Things seem like they started going south. So maybe it's a society. There's maybe more education, philosophy, the birth of philosophy, maybe the birth of arts. Although, do we even know if that's true? You know, the birth of maybe some sort of modern sense of like bringing in engineering and science into the picture, albeit ancient form of such, all start coming in. But so does a lot of that manifest destiny. You know, the Greeks and the Romans destroyed the first two temples in Israel. So the Hebrews had built a temple to their monotheistic God. First, the Greeks go in there, destroy it, you know, take a bunch of slaves, again, crossbreed a lot, hence the different looks of a lot of Jewish people today, you know. Same thing with the Vikings. The reason the Vikings, if you go to a Scandinavian country now, and people are like, oh my God, these people are also beautifully sculpted and muscular, it's because they took the most beautiful women from around the world. They took them. They were their sex slaves, their women. They were pillaging and raping and going all over Europe and the country, taking the most beautiful women they could find back home to their countries and making them make babies. And now you can see it when you go there. You're like, why are they so beautiful and well sculpted and whatnot? I mean, honestly, if we look at where we are today, the dark past has led to a lot of today's attributes. The reason a lot of Black people are predominantly athletes in the NBA and NFL and whatnot is because they've developed a stronger muscular stature and body through years of toil and slavery and how things, you know, they ended up selectively breeding the best and the strongest and whatnot. Some current Judaism, a lot of the most religious adherent Jews were killed in Europe during World War II and whatnot. So the ones today may not be as spiritually devout or have the same sense of understanding because a lot of the ones that did let themselves die. Like, we can play this game all across the board to see like how bloodlines have established themselves. But the fact remains, the Greeks, Romans, and Vikings were the first to claim their gods, their belief system, whether it be, you know, Zeus or whether it be Hades or whether it be Thor or these gods, this whole structure, which was based upon the heavens again, right? The stars for the most part, and a philosophy. And they use that belief system to kind of reign tyranny on the non-believers around the world and place themselves as the leader of mankind.
Yeah, well, I mean, these are the Western religions that conquested, whether it was literally like on boats going out to other lands, like you were saying, pillaging, or it was culturally in, you know, empires. You know, I mean, well, because like, I mean, just ancient Greece, you know, you had the Persians and you had the Greeks. You know, obviously there's the Battle of the 300 battle where, you know, it was a battle that was, I mean, as the history books say, or as art emphasizes, that was a battle of civilization. And if the Greeks didn't win that battle, we would have a different story. And that's what fascinates me. But, you know, but meanwhile, what's interesting, it's like, it's not like there was this religion and then there was that religion. It's like almost like you could imagine different pawns. And in the East, you know, Buddha was around thousands of years simultaneously, and not all civilizations, I mean, they were trading, but not all civilizations had been in touch with all civilizations. And so it's like each culture was dependent on their cultural practices, which for some became conquesting and others just became keeping to themselves.
So let's talk about the East. Let's move in, because that seems like a natural transition, because I think you're right. The East, where the West seemed more concerned with establishing society and custom. That was not to say that wasn't happening in the East. It absolutely was. It seems like it was more in the East. They were more concerned with unlocking the potential of the individual. I've heard it said Western culture is about dialogue, whether that dialogue be, you know, this is what it is amongst our people that we believe, and the East is about monologue, whether that be with yourself, you know, speaking to yourself internally, unlocking your potential, or the respect for your elders or those in a position of more power, and them letting you know what is happening, and you sort of taking a more passive acceptance of that claim. But they definitely seem like two very different keys to unlock a sense of that spirituality, but in a very that show in very different ways of manifesting themselves.
Mm. Yeah,
So
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
no, okay. So I mean, we talked a little bit about Hinduism earlier. The biggest takeaway for me, besides Hinduism's meditation, I think about in Hinduism, was the idea of reincarnation. Now, although I think maybe some of the ancient Egypt religions didn't they think they were going to be reincarnated? Well, like when they're mummifying their leaders and stuff and burying them with all their goods and their like servants and their cats and stuff. Like everyone, you're just all going in the tomb. So and so died. You're all going in there together now, sealed up. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot we don't know about the Egyptian religion, but yeah, I mean, there was a next place to go, and I mean that's it's in the mystery that because you could pick apart every one of these religious practices, and I mean they all came out of dealing with their life in their culture in a given time, and all the like Buddhism, for example, is not a formal religion. I mean, talk to a Buddhist, they would say it's not a religion. It's actually it's they could say it's more philosophical. It's more of a way of practicing. It's like it's about enlightenment. It's about being enlightened. It is not but you could, and I think that's ultimately what every religion is trying to do, is because there's always some leader who has some piece that everybody else wants a part of, because their life they have malevolence in the world and suffering in their life, and it's like that's why every major prophets from every religion has not only a following, but that's why people develop practices like this is how Muhammad did it. We have to skip twice, use the left foot, put your left foot hand in, your right foot out. But it's like a specific, strict way to do it. But I feel like at a certain point, I mean, generationally, we mix up, and this is my opinion. I'm not any expert, but we mix up the ritual from the reality. And like when you really look at every single source of the religion and what they're functionally trying to do, they're all trying to do the same thing: is how do I live the best life I can? How does my family live the best life we can? And the Eastern religions were the East and the West were as separate as the cultures, and as the world got bigger and smaller at the same time, like as we got more people, we had less, and we had more trading, more interaction. Ideas were shared, culture was shared. So like a lot of these Eastern thoughts, and what back to what you were saying, is like I would say the difference between East and West is like Eastern is very much essence. It is very much the source of being. It's very much meditation. It's practice. And Western is very much, in recent years, is very much intellectualized. It's like the written word was very Western in its idea. Like Jews, like very early on, like Jews were people that wrote down, like the whole idea of a book is very Jewish. It's like how we wrote the thoughts down early on. We create like scripture. That was something like how we share our thoughts in a book.
Know. I mean, but the Greeks were also, they were putting together books on philosophy. Plato, Socrates, they were putting together books, and they were writing. And I think that there were a lot of ancient texts that were doing something similar. I don't think you can just say putting together
the ethos of the structure of a book is very, so it was interaction. I'm not saying they invented the book, but I'm saying written word was established for a spiritual reason.
I think a better way to put it is doing it by the book. Is very Jewish. do it by the book. This is what we do. Where East is like, unlock yourself. You already kind of know inside. But there are two things that you said I want to talk about. the concept of enlightenment is thrown around a lot, but I think physically enlightening yourself, bringing in the light. From our last discussion when we were talking about the spectrum of light and the different ways it manifests itself, I think that's what enlightenment means. And we can get into that more so later. But you had brought up an interesting point earlier about how all these religions do have some semblance of like the golden rule within their practice, no matter where they're from. So I just wanted to kind of go down these different religions with you and see if you can kind of, expand on that. So for example, how would you say Hinduism applies the whole concept of a golden rule?
So Hinduism is like the natural, that was the earliest conception of spiritual practice. And, early, like, as you're saying, it's like reincarnation. And well, as you're saying, every spirituality has some version of the golden rule. And Hinduism, let me look, what does it say?
Really quick,
I have the scripture.
I think your cable to your camera might be getting loose. You've been kind of blurry for the past few minutes. I don't know if maybe it's loose
blurry right now.
Whatever. Yeah, it's kind of like you were on a sailboat too. Your camera was bouncing up and down for a while.
Is this any better, or is it
still? That's better. I'd say just wherever you get it, just let it do its thing and try not to do it because it was kind of just a little bouncy. Okay, I think we're good.
All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, Hindu. I mean, I don't know the exact scripture. I could pull this up. It says, "This is the sum of duty. Do not do to others what you would cause pain if done to you." It's from a Hindu scripture, but it's like, as you're saying, this compilation of all these different faiths saying the same thing, and I think it comes down to that same core teaching.
Okay, so hold on then. So give me an example in Buddhism. How would Buddhism, establish a golden rule within their teachings?
From this compilation of all these scriptures, Buddhism says, "Treat not others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful."
Okay, what about?
And that's from Udana Varga.
What about Confucianism?
Confucianism, one word which sums up the basis of all good conduct: loving kindness.
Okay.
Do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself.
Okay, what about Taoism? What about Taoism?
Regard your neighbor's gain as your own gain, and your neighbor's loss as your own loss.
Okay, so the only one where I don't know if this is in there, does Shintoism believe in the golden rule? Because I know Shinto came out of Japan and was very different, because Shinto is about the spirits and the ancestors around us, specifically Japan. They believe Mount Fuji was the source of the world, as far as like it was a volcano, and Pangea was formed out of Mount Fuji, and thus Japan is sacred land. It is the birth of the world. Where Africa may be the birthplace of man, they view Japan as the birthplace of the nations. The world itself coming into form on Earth. And they believe in their ancestors, but I don't know if Shintoism was practicing that same doing to other philosophy. Were they?
I would be shocked if they didn't, but I don't know. I mean, again, there's thousands of religions that didn't make, like, you could consider them pagans, like they weren't the major religion, and they were certain parts of time. But that's the thing is, we have the luxury of retrospect to say, go back thousands of years, and here's this religion, here's that religion. There's hundreds and thousands of religions that just didn't make it on the top 100 list.
Because I'm just saying. Okay, so we know Hinduism, we got reincarnation, we have yoga, we have meditation. Buddhism also meditation. A lot of meditation comes out of Buddhism and Buddhist philosophy. I think, what else do we have on that list? Taoism is the moment, staying present, mindfulness.
Yeah, that's yin yang.
Yin yang, balance,
and flow. It's flow.
Confucianism is wisdom and teachings, and Shintoism is understanding that the spirits of our ancestors are surrounding us. It's not necessarily far away in this hypothetical heaven, and the clouds are far away. There's a membrane here. Our spirits are with us, and respect that. So I want to move from the East, though, and I want to talk about the birth of the monotheistic faiths. Okay, so some might say these are the Western religions. Okay, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Now we started touching upon Judaism a little bit when we were talking about the Hebrews leaving Egypt They started establishing the 12 tribes based around the different sons of this progression. Someone will get on me if I say it was Abraham and not Jacob, or who it all stems from. But Judaism is born through 12 tribes, which are essentially the lineages of the sons of, I don't remember who. Abraham? Do you know? Do you know who the father was?
Definitely, he's the father of the nation.
There we go.
Yeah, it's Abraham.
And then there are 12 tribes, descendants of the bloodlines. They go out into the world. They have different purposes. This also goes to when I was saying a little bit about, like, is Israel a country, or is Israel the people that have the faith, that are trying to do good acts in the world, amongst sometimes loathing and hatred in the world, trying to do the right thing. It's hard when you're married and someone is throwing that punani at you to say, no, I shouldn't do this. Or it's hard when someone wrongs you, and at that moment, you could get away with harming them, whether it be murder or just socking them right in their mouth, knocking all their teeth out and not doing it. Or, it's always easier to do the wrong thing, the animalistic thing, okay? And if you choose not to, we call those people Jews, generally. Now, Kabbalah is a semblance of mysticism. I would look at it almost as white magic. It's leveling up. There's a lot of spirituality brought in from the rest of the world in that, but I'm not an expert to speak on that, and I don't think it's appropriate in this forum. I would just say that it's almost like wizardry. It's like white magic, using your goodness and taking it to the next level where you're trying to.
I think you could say that. I feel like you could say that about. This is something I've observed in my own, study of religion. Is every religion has its spectrum of mysticism. It's like if there's a full spectrum, there's an extreme on both sides. To people who use it by the books and the ideas, and others by the practices and the rituals, and then others who just or in the mystery. Like even Christianity, there are people who are very mystical, who you'd probably say that person seems like a shaman. There's every religion has a mysticism.
My mother grew up in a practice called Rosicrucianism, which is essentially Christian mysticism. And I think they're bringing in a lot of these traditions that we talked about in the very beginning, with tarot, runes, divination. They're incorporating those teachings in. I also think that's kind of what is it called? The Freemasons. I think a lot of these orders are talking about these kind of sacred teachings that are a little bit outside of just the general religion.
Well, that was it's interesting about Freemasons is they didn't require you to believe in any or in one specific faith, but they did require you to believe in a higher power or God. And that's one thing just about the mystic, I've discovered, most people, I don't want to say most people, but many would say it's very woo-woo, just to have any mystical belief. And what's interesting is St. Paul, the one who wrote, most of, he didn't know at the time, but all the letters he wrote became is now the New Testament. He was a Jew, and he was a mystic.
Bro,
he was a Christ mystic. They were all Jews, but he believed. But the point is, he believed. He believed he was a Jew
before Christ. It's all Jewish.
Oh, right,
Jewish people.
Right. Well, but that's the point. Is the word Christianity came later, and St. Paul was a Jew who felt he had experienced the Jewish Messiah that the Torah spoke of, and as far as he was concerned, that's what it was. And he was very much a cosmic mystic who had.
Okay. But give me 1 second. To say they're experiencing mysticism or whatever, that's woo-woo or that's out of the ordinary. They're talking about Jesus was committing miracles. That is, he is, performing the magic. If you are to believe in him, there's walking on water, turning the water into wine, pulling fish and loaves, all those things. Those are acts. What I was saying earlier too, when if what was I saying? Telepathy, telekinesis, teleportation, all these things. If that is something that these people were even able to do way beforehand, when there's no other distractions, as long as you're just super channeled, using maybe 100% of your brain power, understanding the physics and the molecules and doing something with it, then I think it's only now when we get to the point of science became our God. Science and technology and money has become the modern day God, in a sense. We killed God, and we made it these tools that we have at our disposal. Back then, I think it may have been more commonplace. Islam, Christianity, whatnot, they were talking about angels and stuff visiting.
I think in the early 20th century, I guess it's the end of the 19th century, Dostoevsky kind of foresaw it. Like the Russian author. I don't know if you read any of his books, but he kind of predicted a lot of this. How maybe it was a book, Crime and Punishment, or another one, but he was basically talking about he was foreshadowing. He saw where humanity was heading, and he kind of foreshadowed that humans would kind of lose God. We became God. We replaced God with ourselves, and he predicted it, that in the 20th century became the bloodiest, the deadliest century of all humanity. Like more people died in the name of righteous, what we thought morality, than any other century, several times over, combined. And he predicted that. I mean, obviously with like in Russia, also with Germany, like,
okay, so
both world
I don't want
wars.
to get ahead of ourselves, because I think next we will talk about weaponizing religion next. Let's just get through Christianity being born out of I'm not going to say rejection of Judaism, but let's say Judaism had established a bunch of sects, sects at the time, and Jesus was someone who said, hey, I don't like these money lenders and the temples and these things that it just seems like it's not what he thought the religion should have been. And Judaism is a very eye for an eye religion. That's in there. It's in the Old Testament. Eye for an eye.
He saw his own religion was blinded by its own laws, and had been lacking the love that it represented. Stoning
people to death was in the Old Testament. It was very patriarchal. Women were second class to a certain sense, and I think Jesus came along and said, hey, I want to see something different. Now, I personally, my view of the Trinity is different than I think the common one, because when I look at the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, to me, when I think of the Father, to me, it is literally the universe. When I think of the Son, I think of the S-U-N, Son, that is giving us life as a solar system here. And when I think of the Holy Spirit, I think it's our ability to choose right, or to do acts of good, and the reverberations that has among us. But I do think Jesus Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, this man, may have been the spirit in the flesh, where that he was just like a rock star at the time. And he had all these followers who were like, this guy, whether he was performing miracles or not, people were literally like, this guy's got it going on. And he converted a bunch of people that were just practicing paganism, or should I say, not practicing anything at the time, and said, hey, we're going to follow him. He's saying he's the Messiah, and we buy it,
I love that you use the term rock star, because he kind of, I would use the same idea as like, he was kind of like Elvis. He was spirituality.
He was bigger than
Elvis. Wow. No, but exactly. No, but the point is, like, not saying popularity wise, he's the most popular figure in history, undebatably. But the point is, with Elvis, he took something that was older than him,
black music,
and made it mainstream.
Right.
And that's what I mean. And that Jesus made. Well, here's something that's interesting, like just pointing to exactly what you're saying, is like, this is something that Judeo-Christian values and spirit and culture has done. It birthed the individual. Like before, our own personal sovereignty was maybe left to kings of very few, like the sovereigns, like the ancient sovereigns. I don't know if it's in. I think there's India. Maybe wrong. But most of the time, the individuals was not exist, and that was something that was radical, that Christianity that brought, was like, oh, I have my own. It's like before that, where like choice was very communal, and the individual was born in that Judeo-Christian period, and that was the one thing that Christianity did bring, was the individual. There was no such thing as individual before that.
It also, and I mean, it brought so the scales. There is the good that comes in that and trying to do right, and then there's also we'll get into when it all became weaponized. But I also want to just touch on Islam really quick before we move forward into that too. So Islam in the Middle East, same thing. The Prophet Muhammad comes up, says he talks to an angel. Now I'm not familiar with the Quran. For thousands of years or whatever, the Quran was purely in Arabic. It wasn't meant to really be read outside of that people. And then the translations, there's no telling, what's been put in, what's been taken out or whatnot. There was talk that Islam was for a long time an anti-Judaism. There was like, they said there's language. You see the Jew.
Well, there's a story
bush or behind the rock
in the Old Testament. Well, and that's the part of it is like that's part of, and I don't remember the details are a little fuzzy, but part of it is an old argument about what happened in Scripture between these two brothers and whose fault it was, and
or cousins. Like, I look at them like cousins.
But that's a scriptural argument of, because Muhammad came 500 years or so after Jesus, and Christianity was one of the first major religions to be like, go share this with every single corner of the world, like Jesus, and like so, and that's why you have proselytizing now. Like it's you wouldn't. Oh, this is an aside personal story, and I don't want to say any names, but like you don't have Jews knocking in doors like, hello, would you like to be a Jew today? Like it's not like we don't. But I have a funny story. There was someone who's Jewish I met at work that was trying to convince me to go to this Orthodox church, and I've been doing my own for my nonprofit. I've been going to Hindu temples. I've been going to Orthodox Jewish temples. I've been going to Christian churches. But I met someone at work who knew I was half Jewish. My father's Jewish, but he's like, Jewish looks really good on you. You should really come out to this Orthodox. And it was like really, it was like I was telling my dad about it, and he's like laughing about it because Jews don't. There's no Jehovah's Witness Jews who are just like, would you like to be a Jew today? Like it's not.
If anything, it's the opposite. You tell someone you want to be Jewish, you look at them and go, "Are you sure?" They call it taking on.
Are you sure about that?
On the yoke, taking on the yoke of the kingdom, like an ox. Like, right. You really want this? They're like, go put on a kippah for a week and go walk around. That's the difference of the argument when they talk about like passable, how Jews are passing white. Like I'm half Hispanic, half Jewish, but I look like a white guy. You look at me, I'm a middle-aged white guy, okay? I put on the kippah, people automatically ascribe whatever they think about the Jewish religion right onto me, all right? That's the argument where, black people say, hey, we have no choice. If people are racist, they just see me, they see my skin, they think I look like this, they're going to ascribe whatever they think already. You have an option, but, that's getting off on a tangent a little bit too. But let's go, this seems like a natural progression to, when religion became weaponized, man, when people started using their faith as what we were talking about, what is it called? I keep saying divine providence.
Manifest destiny.
Manifest destiny. Okay, because like you're saying, hey, it's time to practice the crusades. We're gonna bring God to the rest of the world, and we're gonna do it by murdering the people who don't believe like we do. All right?
Yeah.
How fucked already? My thought. Here's my thought, because you're totally right. Because there's a macro and a micro version of this, because religion has always been weaponized as long as there's been civilization, but it's either internal or external. Because like you could argue that early, the whole point Christianity started was because if you read the Bible, the Pharisees were kind of like you didn't say it overtly, but like Jesus, whenever Jesus actually like raised his temper, when he got angry, when he knocked over tables at the temple, it was because of the Pharisees, the Jews. And I would make this comparison from a book I read. It's a brilliant analogy. Is like the Pharisees of their day were very much like the Taliban of modern day. They were the ones who were the most esteemed, the most they knew the Bible and the scripture like the back of their hand. They could tell you every script. They knew they were the keepers and the authorities of the law. And Jesus would say, this is my words, not his, like, you're blinded by the law. And then I feel like that it was weapon, like, and Paul, again, he's also one of the top 5 most
famous, impactful people in history, and of all of civilization. He was murdering Christians before he had his Damascus experience, where he literally, or Jesus came to him in his vision. But what I'm saying is, like, he discovered that religion could be the worst or the best of people, and he had actually become a weapon for his religion, that he was blinded by the law that he was so fervently trying to protect. And I think that's something that religion becomes, is when it was like, I know truth and everybody else is wrong. And it's like,
Right.
this is what we get trapped in, this righteous morality that we know, I know, and I know the sole truth, and everybody else is wrong.
It begins.
And it's like, this is where we use a religion as a brick, like a scripture as a brick to throw people.
It becomes a tool of propaganda and control. Like, I've heard it say, the opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is control. You know, when you start trying to control people, when you start controlling the masses,
it's fear.
So
it's rooted in fear.
Spirituality, a lot of that is love. So, like, we didn't even talk about it when we were saying how the Eastern religions all had aspects of the golden rule in them. I guess the golden rule is pretty clear in Christianity. That's what people do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. But where can you find it in Judaism and Islam?
So in the Talmud, it's not the Torah, but it's the Talmud. They say, what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. This is the whole Torah. All the rest is commentary.
Woo! That's fire. That's a fire take right there. Okay, and then what about, and then earlier too, I just want to clarify. You said Muslim temples. I think the preferred term would probably be a mosque. Muslim mosques.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
yes, correct.
Where in Islam do you think, or have they mentioned the golden rule?
So Muhammad said, not one of you truly believes until you wish for others what you wish for yourself.
Okay, so right now we have pretty much the golden rule from the top, the founding members of different religions, or not religions, spiritual beliefs. But the religions themselves end up becoming weaponized. And I think one of the earliest manifestations of that is, even up until recently, the calendar. The American calendar was BC, my entire childhood, before Christ. You know?
Right. Oh, yeah, that's right.
I'm like, whoa, we're marking time. Even now, we may say BCE, but before Common Era is still starting as
before Christ.
The crucifixion.
Right.
The crucifixion is the marker, and to me, that always seems like the darkest moment in his history. But what it did create, like much like, forgive the analogy, the Twin Towers going down on 9/11 sparked an entire way of just like the Patriot Act went into effect, where we started, and the war in the Middle East, which have kind of been nonstop since. The crucifixion of Christ was this tentpole moment where it's like, okay, pick a side here. If you're not with this, you're against us. Something else too, just what we're thinking about before Christ and then after death, which is still dark. We still live in AD. This is not ACE, or do we call it Common Era now? Maybe they call it Common Era, because before Christ and after death, that was just our childhood. That's so dark, and twisted and backwards. But like, I
don't think it's for Anno Domini. It didn't stand for after death.
Oh, Anno Domini? What's that mean?
Anno Domini, actually, let me see.
Watch, it means after
Anno
death.
Domini. That'd be funny. That'd be great.
So, I'm just saying it's very dark. So, I mean, the Crusades take place.
It means in the year of our Lord. In Latin.
Okay.
Anno Domini.
Okay, fine. So, still, like, to me, a lot of people were being crucified back then. It was a popular means of execution. It wasn't just Jesus. The fact that they've made a crucifix, even with Jesus' body hanging on it, like their symbol of Christianity, to me is dark. That's like, doesn't seem like that's what we choose, unless there's some reason they chose that symbol. It's a very evocative symbol. It evokes a very strong reaction to people, an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
Same thing too.
Definitely.
I feel like Jews got bad press because, especially if Jesus was Jewish, you're saying he was the king of the Jews and all that, and it turned into like the Jews are the reason he was crucified, when really the Romans and the Roman soldiers were the ones acting it out. Romans are Italians. Italians aren't stigmatized. And if we want to get into a deeper conspiracy, the Roman Catholic Church was the first major institution of Christianity to start bringing in, like, this is what we believe. That seems like trying to control the narrative, you know? Like, hey, you guys killed him.
Well, yeah. Well, it's like PR. You know, I mean, well, the thing is, that's one of the oldest institutions.
The Romans killed him.
Church.
The Romans killed him. The Roman Catholic Church becomes the biggest proprietor of Christianity, and they immediately spin it as it's the Jews' fault.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just think that's probably carried over. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think that's just carried over generational anti-Semitism that's just been prevalent in history. Because,
of course,
it's like, because it's always like, oh, there's Jews in the room. It's probably their fault. You know, it's like kind of like the scapegoat. You know.
And I'm just saying, though, if we're talking about like the mechanics of history and going into time and where it all comes from, the Romans killed Jesus.
Right.
The Roman Catholic Church becomes the proprietor of Christianity, and one of their major things they do is they go into the Crusades. The Catholics start the Crusades, spreading Christianity across the land, when the majority of religions at the time were Judaism, which was a smaller sect, but it was a prevailing form of religion. And afterwards, you know, Islam came. They weren't so much going into the East. The only other major religion that the Crusades were going after were saying, hey, you're pagans. We want to absorb you into our way of belief. So we have the numbers now. Hence the different sects of Christianity that spring up all throughout Europe at the time. But more so, if you don't believe in this, we think you should die. A lot of those people were Jewish. That was the other prominent religion. You either believe in nothing or you're kind of Jewish at the time in Europe specifically.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, after Christ, and no pun intended, after he was crucified, every religion kind of went back, not back to the drawing board, but they had, it's like, what just happened? Like everybody, like even the scripture that was written about Jesus didn't come for like 20, 30 years later, and sometimes much longer. But like how Judaism fought, like, it's interesting to watch how early Christian times, how Jews were writing about Christians. So, but like, as far as early Christians were concerned, they were Jews discovering what the Torah was fulfilling. They saw it as a fulfillment of the Torah. And then, you know, early Christians, you know, eventually, like, as it was spread, because Jesus was saying, like, you are the apostles for the Jews, like, but then Paul was the apostles for the pagans, like he was like the spread it to the world, and like, so he basically created new churches that were not just Jews, and it was like one of the earliest religions that actually did that. And that's part of, after, you know, I mean, he was literally sending letters in this is early scripture to people that maybe less than 50 people at a time, like what we know is like Colossians and all the early letters and the epistles that Paul wrote, that is now the New Testament, were to very small groups of people. And as culture spread and as civilization expanded, you know, all these different people were like, well, what just happened? Like, this is, what did Christ mean when he said this? What did he, no, I think he meant this. I think he meant that. And it's like, this is what humans do. We perseverate. We and this is where I see is the concept of, I mean, this is kind of back to the theme. It's like, is spirituality logical? It's like, to me, it is an experience that there's no law. It is the mind that is the source of the problem. When we identify with thought being spirituality, because spirituality is not thought.
Well, we're separating more than, okay, excuse me, go on. I'm sorry.
I was saying, well, it's because spirituality, you know, many would argue, or like, this is what happens in early, like when religion becomes based in thought, based in tribalism, based in being right, being good, and this is exactly the way it is, and I'm right, you're wrong, and not about your own individual connection to God and your own, you know, it's your own, what do you call it, your enlightenment, your own transfiguration, your own.
Let me jump in here, because I think spirituality is expressed in deed, in practice. So when we're talking about enlightenment, and
it's in being,
your being, human being. So where religion started weaponizing these teachings into a tool for imperialism, So Manifest Destiny taking over, you know, whether it be Spain, England, Rome early on, uh, I mean, France later, all these different countries that accepted Christ and Christianity as their the religion of their land, their form of it, and a lot of the pagan rituals got absorbed to make it more palatable for the people in the area. Okay, so for example, the Easter Bunny, the sign of fertility, the spring equinox. Okay, the Christmas tree is part of the celebration of the winter solstice. You know, coming into place. Eggs is fertility in Easter and whatnot. These are pagan practices, and you know they're already happening, but they got absorbed into Christianity to make it more easily palatable for the people in the areas throughout Europe.
Yeah, I would say they got absorbed into culture, and historians and people lump it together as Christian. It's like this is how it's not like day one of Christianity. All right, we're Christians, and on this day of the year, we're going to celebrate Easter, and we're going to talk about the Easter. But it always came later that we add and adapt our culture based on life, how it happens in the moment.
95 to 99% sure there's no mention of Santa Claus in the Bible. Okay, you know.
Oh, really? Damn it.
You know, so I'm just saying, like, all these things got brought in to make it more palatable for the people. This was imperialism, though. It's a governing tool, and religion became the tool. It's like same thing, a flag, a banner. It was a symbol for the nation, but none of that do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Pretty sure murdering them isn't what you want done. Okay, so there are lingering effects of colonialism, because you go in, even today, in America, for instance, Latin people, you'll see on like a sentence that says, are you Hispanic or not? Hispanic is a phonetic transliteration of España, because they went down into South America. Here's España, you're Hispanics. Now, it's literally a whitewashing of Spanish speakers. Spanish. You're speaking Spanish. No, you're not. If you're from, you know, Guatemala, you're speaking Guatemalan, but we all call it Spanish. So many countries, you speak Spanish. Like, maybe because they got taken over by Spain on their holy mission from God to spread Christianity and their divine right to the different land.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Same thing with oh God. I lost.
I mean, you could go to. I will just like talk about indulgences, and like this is something every generation has some form of. You know, English. when it's like the corruption of and the pride of the systems we create to try to make ourselves right about our history and our past.
Well, I was going to say,
our families and our. It's like just like why Protestantism came about, why Lutheranism came about, was because of the corruption of an organization that's like, hey, you're sinning? Well, pay us $10 and you can get absolved of all your sin. It was like, wait, what?
Well, but that's what I was going to say. The other example is that we speak English in America. We really speak American, but we were colonized by England initially, and we speak that same language, even though it's a different version. But that's another example. These are the lingering effects of colonialism that is spread across the world. You know? A lot. When we think about how Alaska and Hawaii are part of our United States, do you think the fact that Hawaii is halfway to Japan and we need to refuel our military planes and maybe set up, you know, our Navy fleets closer by have anything to do with that? Or the fact that Alaska is halfway to Russia has anything to do with that? You don't think it's purely strategic? And part of the practice.
What's what humans do? We move forward with our interests and our strategies at heart, and it's like it's based on our own divisions that we create. It's like our intentions are based on whatever is in front of us, and if there's a political adversary or religious, it's like if our way of life, it's like it's back to the way of life, like what our culture and our way of life is threatened. We have to just present the other as a boogeyman. Exactly,
but what I'm saying, using religion as the reason we're doing that, it has to do with money and wealth and taking people's property and being strategic. Eugenics, killing people, saying that they don't have the same rights or the same depth of understanding because they didn't believe the way the European Christians believed, the tribal religions, killing them, and the mentality of the white savior, which goes back to our last show when I said, I'm driving down the freeway. There's a giant 20-foot glow-in-the-dark cross on the side of the mountain. What is that really saying? Is that expressing your faith, or is that expressing your superiority? Your white symbolism?
So I see like a lot of the weaponizing of religion, and this is probably weaponizing, ideals in general, but particularly religion, is when people try to own their, how do you put it? It's like, it's escaping me. It's like when you have a certain way that it's like your own truth. It's not only saying this is the way it is. It totally left me. But I think one of my points is we weaponize what we give others, or what we take from others, is based on our own worldview, and it's to protect our old worldview, our own pride of our own interests, our own way of being, and our own way of life, our own quality of life. And early, this is the biggest thought, and it totally escaped me. But I know that early on, when Christianity was still developing, there's always I remember. So it's like always like the best, and it's always like the best intentions, and say, yes, we're just trying to spread the word of Jesus and to try to bring people to heaven, which is like sounds great, making people happy, making people. It's like, but the thing is, what we do is we fit others in the box that we have limited ourselves to. It's like when we share a religious idea or a concept. It's like this. It's this conquest of my way, not my way or the highway, but it's like we shrink the practices of others to try to affirm our own beliefs.
I think the other has always felt like a threat to, I would say, small-minded, petty, weak people. But if it's coming to politics or rule, wealth, I need resources. I think that it's an opiate of the masses. Religion became an opiate to control people. It's easier to say, it's like saying, you don't support the troops? Like, well, I definitely do support the troops. I support people not getting killed and Americans having to fight to protect us. Absolutely. But I don't necessarily support the reasons that have led to all the wars. Vietnam, for example. Oh, you don't support the troops. You're not American. Same thing. You don't subscribe to this philosophy, this religion. You're with us or against us.
Oh yeah. So I remember it's like reminds me of like the movie. I think it's The Manchurian Candidate. It's like I see. It's the wolf in sheep's clothing that religion presents itself as, or not. So I don't want to say religion, because religion isn't bad. It's the people that represent and that are toxic, that are even unaware of their own egoic intentions. It's like they're blindsided, or we're all blindsided by their generational toxicity, but it's like it's not. But how we are knocked down by toxic institutions or religious organizations. It's the people who say. It's not the ones who say, "Hey, I'm an evil person and I have a sinister plan and I'm going to make the world worse." It's the people who say they're doing good, but they're actually being toxic, and they're weaponizing something that could be beautiful and using it to attack and to divide and to conquer.
One of my favorite documents is the Constitution, and they talk about the separation of church and state. You know, right there. Have you seen any separation of church and state and the way we're being governed and the way, you know, we're being spoken to by those in power? They're using church and the belief of that to approach our agendas. But let's go ahead and bring this into America, because I think we're finally getting to the point where we're at America now. Okay, and there's a lot of American neo religions, I would say. You know, they came about here. The Amish, for example, you know, which kind of wanted to stay living like pilgrims, I would say. You know, they wanted to stick to these roots. They didn't want to keep progressing. It is a little bit what do you call it, where you're like, it's not a separatist, but where you just stick to your own kind. What's that? Not an apartheid state, but like it is a little separatist, okay? But
I mean, isolationism or separatism or tribalism.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. Well, to your point about, I just see connecting this, but in America is a very good point. Is the separation of church and state, and this is something that I'm reminded of. Is it's actually not in the Constitution or in the Declaration of Independence. It's actually who actually created the whole, and it's you could call it a miracle. Jesus is the one that created the separation of church and state. Do you know the context of that?
No,
because it's actually not. It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Declaration of Independence. He was being challenged. I believe it was by the Pharisees at the time. They're asking him. It's like, well, what do you like? You know, like basically they're saying you owe taxes for this, and like, what do you say about that? And Jesus said to I think it was the Pharisees, says, give back to Caesar's what is Caesar's, and to God what is God. Yeah. And the point is like, there's a point for government, and there's a point. It's like there's the material world, and there's and there's the currency, and there's a politics, there's a role and function. And it's like, but Jesus is the one that made the separation of church and state. It's the institutions that confuse that.
This is incredibly important to know, because not only did I not know that, but to know exactly the wording, that's so important to be able to pull out at any point. Because especially when someone is weaponizing their Christianity, you say, well, as Jesus said, and you can get into the separation of church and state, it matters, man. It matters across the world to me.
No, I was under the impression it was in our early founding documents, but it's actually Jesus that said that.
Where did you find that? Because, you know, the internet, I don't know if you know this or not, there's not a fiction and a nonfiction section on that thing.
Yeah. So it's actually in Mark, and I think it might be in a couple places, but if you do Mark chapter 12 of the Bible, you'll see I think it's 12:17 is the exact line, but read the whole chapter and you'll get the context. But he literally, like, this is what happens. Like Jesus is talking to people, and then people come to challenge Jesus and say, "Well, what do you say about this?" And it's like, "What do you say about that?" And Jesus, most of his miracles were in response to people challenging him, or like.
I'll tell you something. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Jesus. Okay, like when people say, "Do you accept Jesus in your heart?" Yeah. I do. I think that I'm with a lot of those teachers.
Oh yeah.
I'm not.
Most of the bad thing is the toxic fall. It's like nothing against Sublime fans, but it's like Sublime fans. They can be obnoxious.
Does it have to be Sublime?
I love Sublime. The point. I'm not particularally anyone, but I'm just saying the fan base can be obnoxious, and you can still love the band.
Sure.
And just like Jesus, it's like, I mean, and not that, you know, Christians aren't just, they're not just fans. It's like, woo, on the sidelines. I mean, the point is, you're supposed to live like Jesus.
Right.
And he's like, follow me. This is the way, the truth and light. And it's like, but it's like, you follow me. And it's like, everybody has the opportunity to choose that way of life.
But part of the appeal of Christianity, or modern day Christianity, is just, it gets away from follow me and I'm the way and the truth and the light to subscribe to this religion and
follow this checklist and just believe this.
And you are good. You can sin and not follow it, and you're already forgiven because his death washed away your sins for you. And I almost think there is maybe some validity to that, but like a baby good energy in heaven. Like, okay, you get to go to this, because like if you're a murderer, and then on your deathbed, you're like, I've sinned. I'm sorry, Jesus, forgive me.
Right.
Who knows? I don't know the answer to that. Maybe you don't have to suffer for it right now.
I just think if you're in a place to murder somebody, you're definitely in a place of suffering. And it's like, and I think some of the saints said, and no one will be surprised. I mean, I say heaven and hell begins way before you die. Whether or not it's a place, I think you're in hell or you're in heaven is a state. It's not just a state of mind, but it's a state of being.
I gotcha.
And it's like just like Jesus says in Luke, and I have a lot of reference. It's like when they're challenging him. It's like, well, where is this heaven? When's it going to happen? And he's in so many words. I'm paraphrasing. It's like heaven is not a time or a place. Heaven is within you. And it's like if you're suffering, you are in hell.
Okay, hold on. You're jumping the gun a little bit. We're gonna get there. We're close. We're almost at the penultimate moment and wrapping this whole thing up. It's coming. All right. Let's just finish. We did Amish, Seventh-day Adventists. Okay, Seventh-day Adventists. They want to bring upon the second coming of Christ. They believe in a Sabbath, which a Sabbath is a gift, man. Before Judaism, people would just work themselves till they died. 7 days a week or whatever, you just work. A day of rest, a day of recharge. Seventh-day Adventists are with that. I also think, they incorporate some practices and whatnot. Then I don't know. Maybe they don't celebrate holidays. Maybe they don't celebrate their birthdays. I'm not sure. I know what's the other one that's similar to it? Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't even think that's on this list. Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate birthdays, but they have a more all-encompassing view of the Father. So it's like almost a world view of God. I've always said the truest sense of using pronouns to me, understanding they and them, is God. God is not a he to me. God is not a she. God is a they and a them. It is bigger. It is an all-encompassing thing. Yahweh is a big thing. Om, all these attributes that represent the source, and I think that's a lot of what Jehovah's Witnesses believe in, is that, and I'm with that too. Mormonism, Mormonism came later, and I don't know how much of that is real or not. I know a lot of the agenda in the religion was polygamy. There was a lot of stuff with Jesus coming back to America, white blonde Jesus, by the way, coming back to America and saying, hey, we're allowed to have a lot of wives, Okay. All right. But do they seem like good people for the most part and follow a lot of rules? Yeah. It's just that one little pen. And then we can, marry as many 13-year-old girls or 14-year-old girls as we want. Like, okay, that part, maybe we should look at that. Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard was writing fiction novels, and at some point I think he realized, hey, this whole religion racket can make you a lot of money, and if I put together a good story, there are a lot of people out there that are searching for something that may end up giving me their money. Okay, and Scientology, I don't know. It seems.
There's an L. Ron Hubbard quote that says, you don't get rich writing science fiction. If you want to get rich, you start a religion.
There you go. Okay. Satanism. I think when Satanism really started getting put together as a religion, it was in the sense of anti-Christian values, living for temporal pleasures, where Christianity talks about the 7 deadly sins. Satanism says, man, go all in, be lustful, be greedy, be envious. What do you think?
I think I was thinking there's a lot of different people would argue different things about it. It's fascinating because each one, I mean, there's a argument and spectrum within each of these. Because like I've met Satanists who it's not like everybody needs to suffer and everyone's, it's like,
I didn't say that.
I say it, but it's fun. Each one of the each one invokes a thought, a feeling, and we have an idea about what each one is from the outside. But when we say like he's a Satanist, like, oh, does that mean he worships Satan? Does that mean he does it? And a Satanist doesn't necessarily mean they worship Satan.
No, but a Satanist is anti-Christian values. Satanism is the best way to put a moniker on yourself to say, I am against modern day Christian values. You know, I am a Satanist. That's the best way to sum that up.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not necessarily saying within the context of what Christians believe. I'm just saying it's
I'm just saying, just like as I look at all these names about, like, you know, like I guess atheist would be one that's specifically stands out, is because I think a lot of people who consider themselves atheists are not actually atheists.
Right. Atheist to me says, I believe in science to a point of, if you can't prove it, I don't believe in it. And because you can't prove this spirituality and afterlife, it does not exist, which to me seems as closed-minded as someone who says, if you don't believe in this Christianity, you know, you're wrong.
It's saying I know the truth because I can't see otherwise. And it's like, yeah.
I can respect an agnostic person saying, I don't know. That seems like the most mature way to look at it. But atheist to me, you kind of that's a child's argument.
Yeah, you can be as blinded as the most blinded of religious. Yeah. Like you can be. That's the irony. An atheist could be as blinded by the religion as a religious person.
And the most recent religion is QAnon, and this is more of that online thing. And Trump tapped into these people. To me, QAnon is so crazy, and I do look at it as a religion. It's so crazy to me because the most dangerous thing to me, like Mormonism, like I said, for instance, I think Mormons practice great stuff. They don't drink, they don't smoke, they're very pure, and then they have this, polytheistic attribute to the religion where it's like, whoa, okay, there's the sauce. Okay, to me, QAnon starts with some good stuff. Hey, there is pedophilia happening amongst those people in power in the world, and human trafficking, and we have to protect our children because young girls around the world are being sexually exploited. They take it to a point where it's like it's happening by powerful and rich people. That's all true. It was proven by Epstein Island, Trump and Clinton going to Epstein Island, and a bunch of other rich, powerful people that go on like the Lolita Express out to somewhere. And then you got 17-year-old girls, 16-year-old girls, however young it goes, as prostitutes, or even if you don't want to look at that, being exploited, sexually exploited. Same thing going on now in third world countries or the Philippines or whatnot. You got 12-year-olds, boys and girls, being sexually exploited. Mexico, okay, Juarez, right on the other side of El Paso, being exploited. That's all real, okay? So you start there, and from an emotional place, you say, this is wrong, and we need to stop this, and it's happening in high levels in society. I agree, okay? That makes sense. Yes, my ears have perked up. We should try to halt all that. Where else would they go with QAnon? There is some level of Satanism taking place in levels of power. Now, as we already spoke about Satanism a moment ago, that doesn't necessarily mean performing blood rites and sacrificing goats for the devil and like this incredibly cinematically evil practices. But it does mean doing wrong. To me, Wall Street culture, capitalism as constituted today, the disparity of wealth, the homelessness, ignoring, not doing unto others as we'd have them do unto us. Let's say that, okay? The opposite of the golden rule, and making those common practices within a society and a culture can be viewed to me as somewhat satanic. Now, maybe that's not the right use of the word, but it's definitely anti-Christian values and perhaps anti-spiritual, as we found the golden rule kind of across the board. So you start with those two seeds of thought, and I'm with you. And you can pull a lot of people in, but then they spin it into some sort of Sherlock Holmes, everybody at home across the country, and that's never been out of their neighborhoods or whatnot, online, piecing these puzzles together with their own internet searches and whatnot, and bias and whatnot, and it blows into this fucking crazy. It blows into a crazy cult of personality. And you can always bring it back to, hey, I'm against this fucking pedophilia and I'm against the Satanism taking place out there. Oh, okay, yeah. And not just that, the aliens are coming down from Pluto on the 14th of July, and they're going to do this, and that's why this is what's going on in North Dakota. And then it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, it just got in a crazy land.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about it to constitute it as a religion.
Well, I'll say it's a cult. I mean, it's a cult of personality, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And while we're talking about cults of personality, unless you have anything you want to add on that, the QAnon.
Not in particular. I mean, for me, these are all. See, we could nitpick every single sect of every religion, because there's so many more that we haven't mentioned.
Absolutely.
And it's like this is just a remnant or a small piece of, there's Protestant, Lutheranism. I mean, just in Christianity, there's thousands.
40
Southern Baptist,
Christianity. Absolutely.
I mean, there's more, and even there's the progressive Jewish. There's progressive Jews. There's Orthodox. There's so it's like there's so many. It's like depending on who you ask on any given day, there's a different. And it's like, but I wouldn't. See that the early on, you had to, because early on you had to distinguish between a superstition and a religion, and now it's like between like a cult and a religion, and it's like where's the line for me is like not like history says what's had credibility and what's given people peace in themselves, but also what's given people power. And it's it's like it's kind of peace or power.
So what we're really doing right here is we're just talking about different aspects of spirituality. Last one on this list was the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, and I put that in there because it's such a clear representation of someone choosing how do they want to express their spirituality. It's almost a rejection of saying, hey, there's so much bullshit underlying and all this other stuff. So here, my expression of spirituality is this: I want to wear this colander on my head. You know what I'm saying? I wear this water colander on my head and take it in my license plate photo, and that's it. But to me, it's almost like Cthulhu. That's when I think of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Yeah. I don't know the intention. I mean, I remember checking out the website a while ago, and I was like, "Is this a joke or is this real?" And some say it's real, and maybe it's supposed to be like kind of a satirizing. I know that's what I say. It's satirizing of religion. And for me, this is a very modern idea. This is something I used to do myself. It's very easy to mock something I don't understand. And, and again, I don't know what the Flying Spaghetti Monster, who the founder is, and who claims to be the one that knows what it's about. And I also know that there's a lot of people that find a lot of peace in their religion, in every single religion, and it's not the religion itself. It's like it's dangerous for an atheist. It's like an atheist. It's like without doing any of our. It's like, how can if I think I know the truth and I could just say you're wrong? Like I can't say I'm not Muslim. I'm not I'm not Confucius. I'm not Tao. I'm not Buddhist. But if I could just say overarchingly that like, oh, they're wrong, and I because I don't know about that. It's like that's what I see. That's kind of a mockery. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they actually believe what they believe. But I see it as a summing up of, oh, religion is crazy. And this is something that's a very secular. Like, again, I mean, we grew up in California, and I didn't have any spiritual upbringing other than celebrating Hanukkah. Like I wasn't like didn't go to temple. I didn't like practice anything. But like my understanding of religion was like, oh, that's what crazy people think because that's not my world. I wasn't born into it. And I feel like that's what we do is people who are different and what we don't understand is very much we mock and we say, oh, well, I don't understand. And it's like in my own spirit, like my own spiritual growth and development and even discovery came from me questioning my own certainty about what I thought I knew. It's like if I'm so certain about what I believe, who do I think I am that I could say that I'm right and others are wrong?
Okay, so it's not about whether who's right or who's wrong. Let's get into the common ground then. You were saying earlier this golden rule kind of comes across through all these different teachings. Now, and I agree with that. So if this common ground is in the fact that this golden rule, doing unto others as you'd have them do unto you, is kind of across the board, then I want to look at kind of a buffet approach to spirituality. We already found that there. So meditation, for example, okay, that came out of the East. Meditation is a way to center yourself. If a lot of our emotional trauma and depression and whatnot comes from the past and living in the past and unresolved issues, and a lot of our anxiety stems from our worry for the future, then meditation is a way we can learn to center ourselves and balance,
be present,
and be in the moment regardless. And you know, also Taoism, I didn't put this on here, Taoism is literally about the moment, okay, and the balance of being in the moment. And that's a lot of mindfulness, you know,
right?
Staying here, present, not meditation, in action, being present in my action, in my body. Okay.
Right. Well, I think this is a really good point, because I see this as an indicator, because every religion has been guilty of this. Because every sect has a healthy and unhealthy, you know, church, so to speak. And I think the healthy churches, whatever religion it is, whether it's Mormon, whether it's Hindu, whether it's Buddhist, whether it's Christian, whether it's Jewish, is very much based in the present. But the religions that are unhealthy and are toxic are very much based in the past, or in like fundamentalism, or the future, and the fear of doomsday and Jesus is coming back and the world's going to end. It's like we create self-fulfilling prophecies based on our beliefs. And when a religion is present, and this is where the buffet approach, it's like it is the tools in the present moment that dictates the future we're living into. If we're living into a future where we are focused on the golden rule, on our similarities, on what's possible together, that's where we can develop. That's where we can grow. That's where we can overcome obstacles together. When we are based on the past, like he said, she said, this is going to happen because Jesus said this, or it's like this fear. It's a fear-based religion or love-based. And every religion has been guilty over the span of history of going both ways. And I think that's the struggle, but also the opportunity, because a lot of people who are religious or claim to be religious
are
coming from fear. Yeah, it's like in some of the most, you know, some of the most like evil people, if there's such a thing in this context, are the people who claim to be religious. That's the crux. That is the crux. It's like those that think they're being righteous and great are most of the time the ones that are doing the most harmful things.
Religion and spirituality aren't synonymous, and sometimes religion is almost the antithesis of being spiritual. So, okay, chakras, for example, chakras are literally, when we talk about enlightenment, we're throwing this word around enlightenment. Chakras are manifestations of the spectrum of light in different attributes within our body and our being. So it starts at the base. Roy G. Biv is the light, the rainbow, okay? Red at our base chakra, our root, and it's literally our connection to the world. So for example, exercise, like you're saying, mindfulness, these things, the meditation, all these practices, but being present and actually doing works in the world. Our sacred chakra is the orange. It's like our sexuality, not being ruled by our sexuality, our lust, healthy sexuality, healthy form of love. Our gut is yellow, okay? That's the solar plexus too. That could be about diet and eating the right things for our body to remain healthy and to be, you know, our best selves within the world. Our heart chakra is green, and that's literally, you know, you can't love properly until you're able to love yourself. You know, if you have self-hate and you aren't being truly at peace with yourself, you're not going to be able to give it to anyone else. The throat chakra is blue, and that's our ability to effectively communicate, you know, which is the opposite of online culture and trolling and just like talking the talk and you know, argue and whatnot. Indigo is our third eye, okay, and our ability to see the bigger picture and to be effective in our thoughts, to think clearly and largely. And then violet is our crown chakra, and that's our antenna into the universe and the higher power. When we talk about enlightenment, we mean our chakras, and that's just a word to describe these different attributes of being: physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, sexual. These are all aspects of human being culture, saying what's being blocked. And the blocks,
Right.
the chakra blockers are the sins. So that moves right into Western thoughts. So, I mean, we talk about lust being run by your junk. Okay, that blocks your sacral chakra. Gluttony, that blocks your solar plex chakra. Okay, what else is there? Envy. I mean, that could block your sacral or your heart chakra. You know, what are some of the other ones? Wrath might actually be blocking your heart. Hate is the opposite. But all these things literally.
Pride and sloth.
Right. Pride might be thinking you know it all. Sloth might be no action in your root. Like they line up. There's 7 chakras. There's 7 deadly sins. There's 7 virtues, which are manifestations of having your chakras, or a particular colored aura. When they say your aura is very orange, it's because you may be very virtuous in this attribute of human personality and being. And then lastly, I think the last one we had up on there was the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments mean thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt observe the Sabbath and keep it holy. All these things, to me, that seems like a roadmap. You're talking about Judaism being about writing, and I'm saying it's about doing it by the book. The 10 Commandments is doing it by the book. Here are some rules that will help you become more enlightened. Not going to make it easier. Maybe that's meditation. Maybe that's yoga, But here are some rules as a guidepost to try to help keep you on the path to be a more enlightened individual. But I think using these world religions together brings us to a more rational view of the afterlife. Because using these tools, as we've already spoken about them, we can start understanding the soul as the energy within us. You are changing that energy by making the right or easier choice or wrong choice. That energy within you changes, okay? When you die, I don't know if that energy is recycled, but why wouldn't God recycle? I kind of feel like our energy may always be the same. What we come into this world with, what we leave with. And I think the purpose of life might be to come to terms with that energy. And until you come to terms with the energy you've always been and your place in the hierarchy of positive and negative, which I think are just synonyms for heaven and hell, or the celestial hierarchy or the circles of hell, those are just words to describe energy realms. Until you come to terms with where you are from and where you're going to go, I think maybe you do get it reincarnated until you come to that term. And who knows if there's a multiverse, how many different ways we could play out this game. But you just have different lifetimes. You're moving through it as an energy. And then finally you say, okay, this is where I belong. I get it. And I accept it. And then you're just there in that realm. And I don't know what that realm is, but I think the energy exists. And that's what we call heaven and hell. So demons and angels, as we know them, are beings that exist in that energy realm. Now, I don't know beyond that. The rest is all kind of theoretical, if they can manifest into something that interacts with the world or not. But God and the devil to me are just synonyms for good and evil. All right.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, good and evil. Our stories that we, that society. Well, it's like this. It's like when you view the biblical perspectives or any scripture, like it's psychology, like the dualities work in if you like from like a psychological perspective, and a good and evil, or I should say, like demons and angels make more sense, or good and evil, or it's like when we're suffering, there's we can, like, you could experience as hell. It's like, oh, heaven and hell make a lot of sense when you apply it to like the duality in a psychological experience.
Yeah, but I also think, and I agree with you, Abe, but those attributes or experiences of heaven and hell are happening in our temporal form. That's
right. Oh, exactly.
So I'm
It's
saying when we die, if we still are able to have experiences, that is a different semblance of what the experience is. Yes, we're absolutely experiencing it here too, but I think that's what we're talking about.
I think there's, I just think there's, and we are always experiencing it, and it's like beyond this realm, what, like the experience, all we can describe is our experience now. We can't describe the experience after. But I'm saying there is a temporal experience that is, for me, it's, it never ends. There is an experience after this. It just, we can't rationalize it because it's not, our brains aren't functioning anymore. It's not the same. It's like, what is experience? What is being?
So hence the title of this entire podcast is Spirituality Logical, because we're talking about a spiritual matter. That's this is what everything, this whole conversation has been about, spirituality. So I mean, you're here, you're saying we're experiencing this spiritual, if you choose to, experience, and then the question was, when we go on, if our energy exists, which we kind of talked about in the first one, energy can't be created or destroyed. That I think is the semblance of what we talk about as heaven and hell. Trying to get into the minutia of what it is, to me, is fruitless. You can't prove it unless we kill ourselves. And then even then, are we going to be able to continue the conversation?
I'll be right back. I'll figure it out. Yeah, right.
So I mean, the idea is saying, so now, talking about everything we have, now do you think spirituality is logical?
No.
Why?
Because spirituality is a being. It's not a thinking. You can, if you are, it's like this. One is spiritual in essence, and like you can be a person like back to East and West. The East is very much tapped into essence. It doesn't matter. It's like I could have thoughts about my essence. I could have thoughts about God. I could have thoughts about myself. But ultimately, those are just thoughts. They're not. It's not action, actuality. And spirituality is a way of being. It is not. It's not somewhere to go. It's not somewhere to arrive. It's just what is. And it's not. The concept of spirituality is not concept. The concept of spirituality is not the same thing as spirituality.
So,
it's like the ideas or concepts.
Your argument is it's not logical because logic takes place in the brain, and it doesn't seem like something that you can fully comprehend. Spirituality is not a brain thing.
It is an experience. It is not a thought.
So, but then is spirituality illogical?
No.
Right. Okay. So I like that too, because that's spirituality is neither illogical nor logical. It's experiential.
Exactly, it is experiential, and that's what it is. Because this is where I see is the crux of humanity, is that discovery for ourselves, that we are not who we are is not our thoughts. We have or our fears or our emotions or our bodies. We have thoughts. We have emotions, we have fears, I have arms, I have fingernails, I have hair. But if you chopped off each part of me, just hypothetically, you see my hand on the floor. It's like, there's Abe. And I was like, no, where is Abe start and where does Abe end? And I'm telling you, it's not the thoughts, is not the feelings, is not our body. Ultimately we are our word, and we are as a possibility, because once we leave our bodies, who we are is what we say, is what we've said, and is what we've created in our being. And what the body of Jesus died a long time ago. The body of Martin Luther King, the body of Gandhi died a long time ago, but their words have created a future to live into.
Their essence lives on within everyone who remembers. Yeah. May your memory be a blessing.
Right, but their word, but the commonality is that they created a future to live into with their word, and they're true spiritual leaders, and that's the point. Is they spoke. Gandhi he wasn't a leader. He wasn't fighting in a war and on the battles. Like he literally was in a bed, not eating, and brought a country to his knees. And it's like, it wasn't what he thought. It was who he was being. And it's like, and this is what every great spiritual leader does, is they speak the future. They complete the past. They put the past away. They bring the future, like this vision of the future. Right, they're living in that future right now, and their words, they're like transmuting this vision in what they're creating with their word, and making it a right here, right now experience which inspires. Yeah, but that's what I think that's
visionaries.
That's what a spirituality is, and that's what a spiritual leader is. It is making real a possibility based on their word. It is their word and their honoring of their word that makes others like, that's the future I'm living into as well. That's the future
that you just summed up the mission statement of Realized Entertainment better than I could have ever thought to. And I'm not trying to compare myself to those people at all, but I'm saying what we're trying to do here is to bring that I can't even repeat what you just said. I have to listen to it again, but a vision of a better future into the present through some sort of dialogue and art that we're bringing forth. But that's the whole purpose of what I'm trying to do here with Realized Entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I agree. Spirituality is experiential. I'm, and I know you got to get out of here soon. So I mean, let's wrap this thing up here pretty soon. But I tend to be a very cerebral person. More so for me, I would rather go to Torah study to dissect the many ways something could be viewed than necessarily sit in shul and be a part of the singing, the cantor singing and whatnot. That part doesn't speak to me as much. That's a personal flaw of mine. I'm not enlightened. I'm a little out of touch in that sense. I'm more here. So, so I don't know. I look at it as logical because it makes sense to me in my head. But just because it makes sense to me in my head doesn't mean I'm practicing. I'm clearly not enlightened. I'm trying to work on it. Before we get out of here, did you want to add anything else in particular before you plug your pluggables?
I mean, I would just emphasize what you were just saying. Like I live most of my life in my head, and based on, I mean, without even realizing it, my past and things that happened when I was a kid, made me feel like I was different and I didn't belong. And I created this story since I was a little kid that I don't belong. And what I realized in my own journey is that my thoughts about myself, my thoughts about the universe, my thoughts about God, my thoughts about others was colored and shaped by my past without even realizing it. It was hidden in my blind spot. It was very much like, this is the way the world is, and this is what God is, this is who I am. But we do this, and we do this with spirituality, but we do this with politics. We do this with everything. It's like we make mental concepts that blind us from an experience of truth. And it's like, and that's it was. I was searching for truth like it was something I could read in a book, like it was logical, and that and it was art. It was particularly a Bob Dylan poem that, without even realizing it, my spiritual journey began with not with the answers that Bob Dylan gave me, was the questions he asked that made me realize that there's something much bigger. Like the words, it's like, this is the function of art. It's like it makes us experience something that's bigger than our brains can comprehend. So it moves us, it inspires us, it touches us, it strikes a chord that's like, there's something way bigger at play that I could ever explain with my words. Yeah, and it was like, but that's the role of art, and that's what I see. It is like, it's like it's an amalgamation of left and right brain. It's not like this is what is, and this is it is a dance of. It is a dance of. It's not just it's like the body, the soul, the heart, and the brain are in a synergized experience.
The chakras, man, that's what chakras mean, is all those attributes of the human experience.
Right. And what I'm saying is, whatever you listening or whatever you, Eric, or if you're like, whenever there is suffering in your life or whenever there's uncertainty, it's like, it will be, it's like, this is a hero's journey. It's like, it's what we don't expect that points us to something bigger than ourselves. And it is in that experience that we're open to, it is not in the answer, it's in the question. And
You're
that's
right.
like I was saying, for me.
I would add, beware of those who seek to offer answers, and seek out those that would prefer to pose you meaningful questions.
Right. It's in the inquiry. It's in the question, because I never would have found myself. I never would have found God. I never would have found something bigger than myself if I didn't. Well, first of all, if Bob Dylan didn't, without knowing it, didn't point me to that experience of something bigger than myself, because that made me be willing to ask, made me willing to look. And I'm not by any means know all the answers, because it's not about knowing the answers. It's in the, it is the, in being in the mystery. It's the comfort in the mystery, that and the mystical, that the answer is in the question. And it is an experience of something bigger that you can't quite put your finger on, because that's what Jesus was pointing to. That's what Moses was pointing to. That's what everybody is pointing to. Whatever words they use to describe it is pointing to an experience, not to a piece of book knowledge that, if you believe it to be true on a book, you're going to heaven.
The biggest problem with all these people fighting today too is when you claim to have the answers, you don't give yourself the wiggle room for it to change tomorrow, or in 10 years, or as you grow, or when you meet different people. Like you can only ask the questions. So if the golden rule applies, we're going to try to do it. Then you can keep growing as a people across the board, and you can respect someone else's perspective on the issue, and we can keep becoming more enlightened. We could do this forever, but one last thing. I just want you to, this tool that came up to me the other day, because you said you're in your head, and I tended to be, most artists, everything happening in our heads can be just as real as what's happening in the real world around us. We can live in our heads somehow. And we can be run by our emotions, where I said, it could be stemming from the past or the future. So one day I was kind of spiraling. I was being a little anxious about a shoot that I'm trying to put together. And there's a lot of people I was trying to wrangle. I felt like I was wrangling kittens, and I'm in the bathroom and I look in the mirror, and this just came to me. I took my right hand and I sort of pointed one finger up, and I curled my thumb and made a little fist. I did the same thing with the other hand. I overlapped it. Let me see if I can catch it on the right angle on this. I tried to line up my fingers from my perspective and do the same thing with my other thumb. Now, it's hard for me to do it on the camera, but I can do it from my eye itself, where it looks like an anchor. And in that process of making this physical almost anchor with my hands, where I'm looking at it and I'm looking down and lined up, it took me out of my head for just that moment, and I was in this thing, and I was like, I'm in my body, I am here, I'm in this moment. And I made a physical anchor with my body, and it took me out of all that emotion, and it brought me back to the moment itself. And this is where the magic happens. All those things in your head are there. You don't have to focus on them. You don't have to worry about it. It's happening. Your body knows what to do. It's already there.
Right.
So here we're experiencing space. We're meant to do the work to achieve the outcomes we want. And to me, the time travel and all that stuff, swimming in your head, can happen in your sleep. You can bring it back into a time, whether it be therapy, meditation, yoga, whatnot. But if you're doing some work, try to stay here. And I think that too is just another way of practicing, a semblance of our spirituality.
Yeah, be here now. It's exactly it. And it's, we have, like you were saying, we have thoughts, we have emotions, we have fears, but you possess them. That's not who you are. No. And it's like, you have thoughts, you have feelings, but that's not who you are. And it's so funny. The core spiritual truth is so simple that our minds overlook it. It's like, it can't be that simple. There's nothing we need to do. There's nowhere we need to go. There's nothing to be or do. You are a divine expression of the universe, and your word has a power that you can create or destroy. And it's like when you honor it, and again, it's doing to others how you want to be treated. It's a golden rule, but it's also your power is like when you recognize the power of your word and honoring it. That's again, that's how, that's back to the first episode. Like, that was what's integrity. That's honoring our word, is how we create a vision and futures to live into that inspire the masses, that bring people to joy and to love and to possibility and creativity, and away from survival, just survival, being enough, looking good, proving it, being right, just, proving others wrong. And it's like, that's this is a paradigm shift. And this is what I'm about. And this is what my nonprofit One Day is about. It is, I would assert, no matter who you are, or where you're from, you have a unique gift. No matter what, whatever it is, whether it's your music, whether it's your written word, whether it's your spoken word, whether you're a beekeeper, whether you make a beautiful garden, whether you can play or sing or dance, like, you have gifts that benefit and contribute to us all. And I want to invite you to be a guest on my One Day virtual stage, which is where you can really share vulnerably and authentically the transformative experiences of your life, what the wisdom on the other side of your trauma, what you faced, what fears, trials, and tribulations you've faced and overcome, that have allowed you to discover your true self, but also made you willing and able to contribute something greater than yourself. So I invite you to be a guest on a virtual stage. You see the link at the bottom of the screen, onedaymvmt.org/share-my-gift.
And
I would love to invite you.
You're talking to the viewers too. You're not just talking to
Oh yeah, I should have shifted cameras,
Yeah, right. If you did that, you would have been looking at me.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, by the way, everybody,
right. You. So
you and you and
yeah. Yeah, no. So, but I mean, I want to thank you so much for having this conversation with me. The well is infinitely deep. It keeps going, but hopefully we brought some insight to some things, or just pose the questions. We're not here offering all the answers. We're just trying to pose the questions, and that's kind of the point of this whole evening Muse show.
Socratic method here.
Okay, so do you have any social media? Are you on Twitter or Instagram or anything? Can they follow you anywhere?
You can follow. Yeah, you can find me by my name, but you can look me up on all social medias under my name. But if you want to go to One Day's, I'll put the link here. But One Day, if you can find us on Facebook, if you want to see our virtual stage, it's One Day Movement, # One Day is Today. It's One Day MVMT. I'll put that in the private chat here. One Day is Today.
Okay. Now, is that that's where they find you on Facebook or whatever?
Yeah, that's where they can find. If you search One Day MVMT on Facebook, you'll be able to be part of our Facebook community.
All right.
Yeah, you can search that.
All right, and then Abe, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. I really appreciate it, and I think I found it very eye-opening. There's a lot there, so hopefully at home can get something from it too and enjoy it too. All right.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you, and thank you all for tuning in with us. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate you, brother.
All right, take care of yourself. Love you, man.
All right, love you. All right.